All right, good morning and welcome back to Gaming with ADHD. It is Thursday night, back for topics and tangents, because let's be honest, it's Gaming with ADHD. I can't keep a thought straight to save my life, but I am joined tonight by Richard from IronAge.media, a new-ish, I mean, he's been out for about 6 months now. A new-ish website focused on content creators, whether it's fiction or art or audio, which, you just added audio, I think, last month.
I've kind of been off and on the audio prompts. I started doing it in January, but yeah, I cover music as well. There's been a number of musicians that have been on the site.
Cool. But it is a site where it is focused on the creator and just making good content, not pushing agendas, and, all those kinds of fun things. So without further ado, Richard, welcome to Gaming with ADHD. How you doing tonight, buddy?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So, I first off, you know what? Let's just get this out of the way early. Why did you steal my stream theme? I mean, come on.
It's so funny because I seriously, I thought you had taken, I was like giving you a hard time. Then I look back, I was like, oh, he's been doing it longer than I have. I guess like just painting mechs is very relaxing by nature. So like it's a natural combination of things. So, but yeah, that was super funny because I was like, oh, he's doing a chill stream. And what did you put it as? Like,
depends on the day.
Painting mechs and chill or something like that. And I came to give you a hard time, and you're like, oh no, you stole it from me. And I was like, what? Oh, and I looked at it. That was very funny.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just giving you a hard time. I mean, let's be honest, I am not the first one to paint miniatures on stream either. Oh, by the way, folks, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with the layout, so if it changes from time to time, just ignore it and pay attention to the words, which will be their own disaster. So anyways, I just thought that was really funny. I love tuning in to your channel on Sunday nights, and like I will admit, sometimes you just need to get your mouth on the microphone. Seriously.
I know. I have a real hard time getting it loud enough. It's one of these things where if I turn the gain up too much, then you can hear everything. But I don't know. I'm still working out the kinks.
Yeah, well, so it's like for me, I have my microphone about literally about arm's length and away from me, and just have the gain. Well, actually, honestly, I don't even know where the gain is because it's on the backside of the microphone. But everybody just complains because I'm loud anyways. So no one's ever complained about the sound. So I'm just like, okay, cool. Anyways, all right.
Yeah. Oh, also, by the way, on that one just to kind of close it out, I have decided to trademark the term chill stream, chill, and all things related to that. So you'll be hearing from my lawyers very soon.
Oh, well, bite me.
Enjoy it while you can.
All right. Well, I think the guys from Legion of Myth might have a problem with that, with their Friday night chill stream.
I'm taking the Games Workshop approach to things.
I don't care who created it. I'm going to trademark it. There we go. Shoulder
pauldrons? Yeah, we invented that.
Done better in Mutant Chronicles, though. Just gonna say. Anyways, so first, okay. Also, folks, please forgive me. It's dinner time, and apparently the 18-year-old doesn't care. All right. So Richard, who are you?
I'm Richard. I'm an engineer by trade. I decided to make a website about indie culture and fiction and comics and everything else after listening to Razorfist's Become the Culture video, which was back in, I think, July of last year.
Okay.
And he kind of put that out as a response to the Eric July success of ISOM #1.
Okay.
And, one of the comments he made in that video, I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but he said, beyond any one of these individual successes, like there's going to need to be basically this whole other ecosystem. If you can't paint, if you can't create, then maybe you can, like, who's going to run the non-woke IGN? You know what I mean? Like, who's going to run these sites and other places that are actually concerned about, what people are interested in, what's cool, what's new, and what's actually good. And so I just sort of waited a month. When nobody did it, I was like, I'll jump on it. And then it's just been kind of like one wild ride since then.
Okay. So you're not a participant then, I should say, in IronAge.media, outside of obviously the engineer and owning it. But I mean, yeah,
well,
writing the fiction.
Right. So no, I don't. I do have some projects that I would like to do, but they're not really in the writing sphere or anything like that. I have, dabbled a little bit. My wife is an author, and I have like ideas for stories and things like that, but I just don't have the patience or the discipline to sit down and hammer out a story. Okay. I have like an art background, but I'm not really like producing anything for consumers as a creator at this point. No.
Got it. Okay, so you're just maintaining the website. But okay, so let's see. So you're in Houston. Are you a native of Houston?
No, I'm an Oklahoman. I'm from the Tulsa area originally.
Okay.
So I kind of found my way down here as part of the oil business, and haven't been able to, the pay's good and everything else. So it's just kind of worked out.
I mean, I can think of worse places to live than Houston.
I mean, I can think of worse places to live, but
all right.
I think a lot of better ones too.
That's fair. I mean, I'm in Phoenix. It only gets to 1,000,000 degrees here, so
that's true. That's true.
But all right, and so it is this is a gaming channel. That's mostly what I focus on. And I think I found you through Razor Fist, through just kind of following different people on Twitter. But I got really curious when because I like to jump in and see some of the different creators that I follow, what they do on their live streams, and I go in and I find you painting BattleTech. Mm-hmm. So what's your connection with BattleTech? I might have done a few things on my channel related to BattleTech.
Yeah, just a few. Okay, so my background with BattleTech actually really begins with like the MechWarrior video games.
Which one?
So MechWarrior 2.
Okay.
My parents got that, I'm pretty sure, like for free as part of like a graphics card or something. Right?
I remember those.
And so then I begged or bought or something. Somehow I got a hold of a joystick, and I tried to play MechWarrior 2 at like the age of like, I don't know, like 7 to 10, somewhere right in that range, Right. And so I just picked whatever looked cool. And I thought that the Nova looked the coolest, and I didn't understand how to like not alpha strike. So I would just shoot all the lasers at once. And every time I just remember being like, I love how this game looks, but I hate this game. Like I could never get anywhere with it. And so then that goes away. And I, years later get back into some of the later Mech Warriors. And so that's where everything started. And from there, I was kind of like, oh man, there's actually a bunch of books and this broader lore. And then eventually that got me into the tabletop game, especially whenever like Razor Fist had started talking more about it. And I kind of started, because one of the things, I don't know, I've had other expensive hobbies, and I was like, I do not need another expensive hobby. And I looked at BattleTech, and yeah, you can spend some money on it, you know what I mean? But it's certainly not like Warhammer or a lot of other tabletop gaming.
Right.
So from there, I got into it, and about a year and a half, 2 years ago, Yeah, that's I'm gonna start. That'll be the members only stream once I'm monetized. But
or you can always set up an OnlyMex account.
There you go, an OnlyMex. There you go. But yeah, so I've been playing BattleTech off and on in tabletop form for only about only a couple of years now. So I really don't have that many painted. It's not like I have tons and tons of experience with the tabletop, but I've played a decent amount, and I really enjoyed painting the mechs. It's very relaxed. So.
Okay, so then your gaming background, is it more tabletop, video?
It's mostly video games, yeah. So I was like, in general, I spent entirely too much time on video games throughout the years. Probably my biggest time sink was EVE Online. Like I got I got really into EVE Online from like 2010 to 2015 ish.
Oh wow, okay.
And like the whole shebang. Ran a corporation and did the serious business PvP type stuff and all that jazz. And
yeah, I tried to get into that one, and it didn't work.
I wouldn't recommend it today, but even back in the day, like you had to have a certain mentality to want to like really enjoy that game.
Yeah, I don't have that mentality, but that's fine. Anyways, all right, so cool. So you start getting into the tabletop. Is there any other tabletop games that you play, or is it just
as
big
far as
stuffy robots?
wargaming? No, not really. I've kind of dabbled slightly in X-Wing and a few of the other I haven't actually played Warhammer, but I've watched it with Warhammer 40K, so I understand how it works and all that jazz. There's a couple of like free games that are out there that are like open source tabletop war games that I've been playing around with. Eventually I'd like to maybe try my hand at making a war game. That might be like one of my first real endeavors to enter into the creative sphere. Just because I see there's a lot of things that I loved about EVE Online that never really played out in EVE Online the way you might want them to. You know what I mean? Because, everything's permanent in EVE. So you win or you lose, everybody's stuff is blown up or not. And so it's a very like strong incentive structure to always make sure you win. Right. There's very little incentive to bring fair matches and all these other things. And so I would kind of like to play like some kind of blending between BattleTech and EVE Online is my once I get all this other crap done that I want to do, I'm going to tinker around with that. So.
All right. So then 6 months ago, maybe that's the next thing I guess that could tie into this, a new section on Iron Age for gaming prompts, make a new game.
Well, I'm not sure if you're being flippant, but there has been a
50-50?
number of people. Yeah, there've been a number of people who have asked about game jams. And
okay.
I'm nowhere near that point yet, but I am assuming everything continues to grow. There will eventually be some kind of an Iron Age media sponsored or mediated game jam. But there's no date on that whatsoever. It could be next year before anything like that happens.
Well, then before we talk about future projects, let's talk about the current projects. So what is Iron Age Media?
So it really has kind of, the way it's shaken out is that there's really two broad categories and within the site, and that is you have the articles, which some of them are other people reviewing things or promoting things or whatever else, and then there's a lot of self-promotion, and these can be for any number of things. Right now there's Cometh, previously there's an animation studio, and really the big kind of threshold that I have for things is, it's got to be something that people at least can consume or can at least pre-order. And aside from that, I've been pretty lax with what I allow in there. You know what I mean? There's some things that are just collections of webcomics, and there's other things that are just, it's like free, a free Substack. But, people are, my thing is that somebody needs to have been like consistently putting in effort, and it needs to be publicly consumable. I may have to start adding some more thresholds on that as I get more and more volume. But, for now, that's pretty much it. And then the other half of the site is the prompts side of things, which is where I put out various prompts, either art prompts or literature prompts, or sometimes audio prompts, and try and get people's feedback and everything else on, like here's a picture, you can write a story about it. Here's a interesting phrase, you can use that to inspire some kind of artistic piece. So
the first thing that caught my eye with Iron Age was the prompt section. Mm-hmm. What made you decide to go this route with the website?
Man, it was pretty early on. So I'm trying to like remember where my mind was at that time, but I think generally speaking, kind of what I was thinking is that I was engaging with a lot of authors, right? And I was seeing a lot of people, talk about how they were writing this or how they were doing that. And I had seen that there were, and I guess in some ways this is a precursor to Anvil, right? But there were people who were writing short stories for this project or that project. And I was like, what would be kind of fun, and also in keeping with some of the themes of the Iron Age, at least with kind of where I've been most interested in, is kind of the return to pulp and shorter fiction and more kind of like punchy, like consumer focused, if you will. So it's not real introspective or high-minded. It's definitely there to like, grab you. It's good, but it's interested in producing a result rather than exploring some abstract idea. And so I was like, short stories, you don't really have a lot of time to go wandering around on some kind of introspective journey. And if I set it so that you only have 2 weeks to work on it, you either get it done or you don't. And I think it would be a fun challenge for people, and it might be a beneficial, a beneficial exercise as well. And it just sort of exploded from there.
Okay. So, all right. One thing I am going to complain, I normally wouldn't, but I'm going to complain about this. Everything pops open in new tabs like all the time.
Yeah.
and my browser is bad enough as it is. So just saying, that's a little frustrating.
Yeah, some of this is a artifact of when the site was much smaller, right? So,
sure. I'm just saying that because
in May.
Oh, sorry.
Is do one thing I'm going to try and do in May is begin the redesign. I don't think like I'm not going to like put ads on the site or anything else. but I think that there's probably going to be enough funds from like Anvil and other, whatever other projects or anything else I go on with, that it'll be able to justify a little bit higher expense.
Okay.
And,
Yeah, no, and that wasn't so much as that's just a me annoyance.
No, I mean, it's fine.
Because
I totally understand though.
Overall, I like the site. I like that.
Well, it's getting unwieldy right now.
Okay.
Like it needs to get it's unwieldy for me, and it's unwieldy for the users. Like if you were a new user to come into it and you really wanted to try and like search for stuff and find what you're really interested in and everything else, that would be very challenging right now. So, like your only option is basically just to wade through it, So, yeah. So anyway, but.
All right. No, hey, that's totally understandable. Trust me. That's my day job is dealing with customer service for websites. Well, sort of. I deal with servers. I don't want to deal with their websites. But they keep calling me about their websites. It's very frustrating. So I totally understand that. But yes, okay. So I'm finally down to the bottom of the page. I've just been scrolling through as we were talking. So like one thing I did want to point out. So you've got some of these early ones. You just 3 or 4 pieces submitted. How long is the average piece of fiction that gets submitted?
Well, that's kind of changed with this year.
Okay.
Because this year I opened it up to poetry and flash fiction. So less than 1,000 words is considered flash fiction.
Okay.
So I would say before that, the average length of a work would be between 2 and 5,000, between 2 and 5,000 words on a lot of these. And now, I would say it's still about that same length of 2 to 5,000 words for most of them, but of the ones that are short stories. But then the other half, I would say you get about half short stories, half poetry or flash fiction.
Okay. And so like we'll just use this one now. Yes, it is an older one. So the path prompt for September 28th, 2022. The weekly short story prompt submission window will close October 13th. So don't submit for this anymore, folks. Just, saying.
I mean, listen, if you submit for it, whenever I convert the site to a live site, I'll probably make it so that you can write a short story for one of the older prompts and have it automatically appear. But obviously you're not going to be eligible to get featured. You know what I mean? Right. And you're probably not going to get seen. So
this is one thing that I wanted to point out. Let's see. So send a link to the completed creation via email and I'll add it below. Note at this time you will need to host your content yourself via Substack or similar. So that I thought was kind of an interesting choice because in one respect, Iron Age is, at least to me, is about hosting this content, making sure that people know about it. But what you've done is more, like an aggregator.
Well, in the very early, there's 2 things there. One is that in the very earliest conception of this website, what I wanted to do was just purely aggregate articles from other websites. And then just like do basically like a little bit of, at first I thought I could pay attention to like on RSS feeds, but then not as many people did those as I thought they would. And then it would be web scraping, and that would have been a pain. And the other thing is that there's a lot of people who just like, if they cover indies, they cover like, they'll cover 20 bad legacy media products, 1 indie, you know what I mean? Right. And then, or if they do, it's not even necessarily about the indie. It's about like, oh, this guy got canceled. You know what I mean? So like, it doesn't even show up on their radar until something bad happens to it,
Okay.
So that kind of blew that idea out of the water. But originally, aggregation was my plan. And the other thing is that I generally do not want to host. I generally don't want to be hosting content because I want other people to be building their own websites, their own followings. I don't want to. Yeah, so like this is a perfect example. So somebody wasn't really thinking about doing this, but I don't want to be the one who owns all of these things. You know what I mean? I don't want to be the one responsible for them. Not just because I don't want the burden of responsibility or something, but because I don't want to be a central point of failure. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really pushing kind of the decentralization aspect as well to all of this. And that I think one of the big problems that we've had over the last 20 years or so with the internet is that everything has been getting more and more and more centralized. And, it's one thing to use social media like I do about, to market yourself or to kind of like notify people about yourself. But it's another thing to like, okay, well, all of my followers on Twitter are on Twitter. All of my followers are on YouTube, and then never convert those to anything else. You are then living on rented land. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you can be evicted at any time. So I really want to like push people. I didn't want to start doing that myself. You know what I mean?
Okay. So because I think that's one of the more interesting things, especially like Andrew was saying, where now he's got his own Substack and his own following.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I want.
Right, by utilizing Iron Age. And I think that's actually one of the best things about it for creators. This is probably the one time I think it is an advantage to get paid in exposure.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's kind of one of these things, and it's like a lot of things. People complain about just about everything, right? And I've gotten complaints about I've gotten plenty of complaints about, not plenty. I've gotten some complaints about the website and so on and so forth. And I'm like, I'm not making anybody submit anything here. You know what I mean? And there's no money. Like there is no money made by Iron Age Media, the website. You know what I mean? I'd set up a shop. I was going to try and sell merch, and then I realized that was a gigantic hassle that I didn't want to mess with right now. So technically there is a shop. It's defunct at the moment because I pulled the plug on the back end of the, the actual checkout cart and everything. But, and even then, like that would never make enough money to really cover costs. So it's one of these things where part of the reason why I decided to do Anvil is that it's like, okay, I can actually, like I want to be able to pay people. I want to pay for all of this content. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was talking to Alex from Cursova magazine, and he made the comment that, people sometimes will be like, well, I'll send this to you for free. And he's like, well, if I accept this for free, then that like really drives down the value of fiction overall.
Right.
And I want to like raise the floor for the price of fiction. And I mean, we weren't talking about the website in that context or anything like that. And he's running a magazine that he sells, you know what I mean? But I do think that like people like myself and other people in the space need to be mindful about the whole paid and exposure thing. And that's part of why I'm trying to be why I was initially delicate with how I conceived of the whole setup.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think there is an argument to be made. Sometimes the exposure is worth it. Like something like this, where it's like, okay, hey, here's a writing prompt. Just put up a short story. I'm not getting paid on it. You're not getting paid on it. But hey, we can work together. And again, sorry, Andrew, you're gonna end up being kind of the example for a lot of this. But you started it. Yeah, exactly. But he was able to leverage that exposure into something, because I mean, I believe some Substack, has a paid option on it, which he's got something going there. So,
well, and the reason why I've pointed people to Substack, and I had I made a small Twitter thread about this the other day whenever Substack was briefly blocked by Twitter, that like Substack offers more value out of the gate than any other social media. And people were like, well, I can't get any traction on my Substack. And I'm okay. So the thing about other social media sites is that, like Twitter, you can go out and you can tweet something, maybe whatever, you get a viral tweet and you get 10,000 followers. Okay. How much value has that actually gained you? Or did you gain more value for Twitter? You know what I mean? Who benefited more from that situation? Okay, now you have 100,000 followers on Twitter. How many of those can you convert into actual interactions off of Twitter? You don't have their emails. You don't have anything about them. You know what I mean? You could say, hey, come here and click this thing. But you could do that on any social media site. Okay.
Right.
Substack gives you the email list right away. So if somebody signs up, they have to use their email to sign up. You get that email. That is a huge value to people who are trying to create things that ultimately they want to sell or get ideas out. You know what I mean? So that's an extremely valuable thing that I think a lot of people don't appreciate about Substack. So that's why I put it towards them, because you're getting 90% of the value that you actually would be able to get out of social media right out the door right away.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, and that's actually fantastic. I mean, whether it's Substack or YouTube or whatever, the fact that, you're leveraging getting content for your website, and people are clearly seeing some sort of a return.
Yeah, people have. And I'm like, not to say that it's like a silver bullet. You write you're writing a story prompt or something, you know what I mean? Oh, you'll have whatever. But I mean, if you can go from, oftentimes it's that initial phase that's really hard for creators. So a lot of them, you can go from zero instead of zero, because you'd be sitting at 0 views on things. Oh, hey there. You'd be sitting at 0 views, but then you can get to 10 views consistently. You get that list up to 10. It's like a huge hurdle. Then you can start having a little bit of organic growth. You know what I mean? And I think that Iron Age Media is at least that little kind of like fertilizing the ground just a bit,
Right. Yeah, no, and I think we definitely need more of that. Whether I generally try to keep my channel a little bit more apolitical, but I think one of the bigger problems isn't necessarily the right or left political side of it. It's more the gatekeep side. I mean, we have all of this access, all of these pieces of technology, but like you said, how do you get that first little bit of traction?
Well, yeah, and so I'm also a pretty big advocate of. I mean, I'm very political, but I try not to ever be political. I don't know. On my chill streams, I'll be like, make some jokes or whatever. But right. I never go out of my way to push issues or something like that. And I try to be very careful in general about it with Iron Age Media, at least on the persona, or the brand accounts,
right?
And I would agree that I think both sides are. Whenever I say sides, I mean broadly the right and broadly the left. I kind of miss a lot of the problems that are out there because they think it's primarily politically motivated, or it's primarily this, that, or the other, and a lot of it, I think, is just, it's a black box. And I think a lot of people who used to understand how it worked don't work there anymore,
or the technology's
and
moved past.
yeah. And so I think that there's a lot of just who knows what's going on. And some of it definitely leaves wide open space for malicious actors to come in. But I think the biggest problem is that a lot of these companies just don't actually know what they're doing anymore, and they don't understand. And all they know is how to lock things down and cut information, and cut until they have what they think is safe and what they're paid to have. And so it's very difficult for small individuals to ever make it in that kind of environment, whether they're right, left, anything,
Yeah, exactly. And so that's like when I was doing some more research and trying to read more of the stories, I just got that kind of that feeling of the old school, like you said, the pulps, where it's, just a magazine with just a bunch of collection of short stories. And I know some of them are still around, but you just don't see them anymore. How do you get in? You have to know the right people. Where, again, maybe we don't need a full publisher. Maybe we just need somebody who's gonna give us a push.
Yeah. And there's a couple, I've been thinking about a lot of different things recently with the whole Anvil stuff that's been going on. And one is that I think right now the indie sphere, even though it's indie, is extremely centralized in a lot of ways, because so much of it centers on Amazon. And that's because Amazon bought up so much of their competition. And, then all of these more traditional publishers basically just shut down any kind of, they close their doors up, and they are extremely ideologically motivated, right? Because they barely make enough money to keep the lights on, and they don't want to, even if they're not, like whatever you want to say, like extremely left-leaning themselves or an activist themselves, there are enough activists in the industry that if they step out of line, they could get hammered,
Right.
And so there is definitely a strong bias in the publishing world, and the response to that has largely been to go indie, and that's great. But the backbone of the indie market right now is Amazon, and I don't trust Amazon to remain favorable towards indies indefinitely. I'm not saying that you can't use Amazon. I think that if you're an indie author, you should use Amazon. Well, I don't know. You probably should look into using Amazon to make sure that it's not that it's a good decision for you. It probably is. But I think medium, long term, I think that there's probably not going to be just I don't know if we can count on KDP to be there forever.
Yeah, no, and I think that's actually a really interesting point that you bring that up. Like I caught a thread on Twitter today about like drive-through RPG, and a creator that was kicked off, which I get both sides of it. The creators mad because they're like, oh well, I just want a place to publish. You said I could do it here, but then the drive-throughs saying, well, no, we had our rules and you kind of just came and stuck your finger in our eye. So I kind of see both of those arguments, but like at this point, where else do you go? Where else do you go for books and for publishing? Right now, unfortunately, it is Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Like as much as we may all, whine and complain. I mean, let's be honest. How many orders do you have coming from Amazon in the next week?
Yeah.
So, and then actually, I do like telling this story because most people don't know it. You want to talk about, Amazon being shady. So, and actually, you'll appreciate this from the engineering side. So, Ring cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Amazon owns Ring.
Yeah. I think I know where you're going.
Okay, did you hear about why Amazon bought Ring?
Oh no, maybe I don't know about this one.
Okay, where do you think Ring set up their servers and their backbone?
Oh, probably on AWS.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So they set it up on the servers. Amazon now has all of the data as far as traffic and input, output, coming from this AWS instance, and then uses that to go in and say, hey, we should buy this service.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Along the same lines, anything that's Amazon Basics, it's because they have all of the sales data. They say, come here, sell your stuff. And then they know, oh, everybody really wants spatulas. We should make a line of spatulas.
And we're going to buy it from the same Chinese factory as they know where it's coming from. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they are, people complained about Walmart, beating mom and pops and everything else. And there's definitely some problems there. But one thing that Walmart will do is that they will get a vendor. So, like let's say you get a vendor who is, making hot pads or something like that. You know what I mean? Like just that looks like a chicken or something, one of these things that you just got to have for your kitchen. And like Walmart will say, okay, that's all well and good. You can sell us, chicken hot pads for, $4.29 at this rate or whatever, for 1 year. But if you sell it to us for 5 years, we'll let you, we'll like pay you this much more up front, and we'll actually let you, charge us a little bit more, right? And they'll do these things because they know from their sources within the supply chain market that the cost on the, like the fiberglass interior or whatever it is of your chicken hot pad is about to increase by 150% over the next 2 to 3 years. And then that vendor goes out of business, and then they just never pay them. You know what I mean? And so,
right.
So they know all of these things. They have huge amounts of data. Data is incredibly powerful if you know how to leverage it. And so, it just goes to what you're saying there.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think obviously in the short term, we're going to have to use a lot of these platforms.
And I'm never saying like, oh, if you use Amazon, you're not blah, 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 that's not my message at all. I'm just saying, like, I think that there's a time coming when it's not going to be all roses with the indie sphere and Amazon. You know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. And I think that's a fantastic point. I was basically agreeing with you that, like you right now you have to use it. But if no one is going to step up and try to do something else, we're not going to have something else. Like as far as like the drive-through RPG example, I know Big Geek Emporium is trying to get up and get started. Obviously, they're 10 years behind. So like a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's not as cool as drive-through RPG. It's like,
yeah, no, obviously not.
Right. They started last month, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
Well,
they've already come a huge way. I don't know if you've looked at them recently, but they did like a redesign in the past couple of months from whenever I did my interview with them, which was just an email interview. But yeah, I mean, they've really come a long way already. So I think it's one of these things where the strength of a more decentralized, smaller system is always going to be the ability of smaller groups to respond more dynamically, and the technology debt increasing on their side while decreasing on the indie side. And I just saw Brian McCoffin talk about AI submissions for Kindle and everything else, and that's all. Like, I understand that concern, but like, we are very close to being able to program with little more than pseudocode, okay, in any language. You know,
Right.
like we're about to turn the corner on software development entirely. And when that happens, how many of these giant tech corporations are going to actually benefit from that? Not very many. Most of them have extreme edge cases with tons of old, outdated code. A new person like myself comes in and says, all right, well, I want to spin this thing up. Let's go. And I start using the latest JavaScript framework with everything, and then an AI integration to build it. And it's nice, clean, and I can test it completely from the get-go. And I can imitate a lot of what they do, even if I only take a tiny fraction of, like, less than like maybe 1/10% of what they have. Like, I'm operating at basically no cost whatsoever. And enough people do that, and you're going to start seeing a new decentralization. And that's kind of what I hope starts popping up with a lot of these different areas. And we just haven't even seen it begin yet.
Yeah, but I will admit, centralization is really, really convenient.
Yes, it is convenient. Yes.
Obviously can be a problem, though. So let's see here. Man, we got like way off topic.
Well, that was
Iron Age.
One of the topics is tangents, so technically we're right on topic, right?
That's true. So speaking of decentralizing and looking for new. I didn't have this at the right spot. Anyways, so you've been collecting all of the writing submissions, and how long? What was it? 2 weeks ago now?
So we're coming up on 3 weeks. It'll be 3 weeks on Monday.
Okay,
that it's been going. Yeah. So we did hold a separate submission window just for the magazine back in February.
Okay.
And then, and that kind of bled a little bit into March for a few people, but that's fine. And, there are a few prompts taken from there, but yeah, it's been quite the wild ride, because I didn't even think about making a magazine until the last week or two of January, and I was like, I'm going to go ahead and do this thing.
So then that's a good question. Why? if you had the website, you were doing the prompts, what made you decide, you know what, I have a digital website, it's super amazing, let's go physical?
Well, okay, so there's a couple of things there. One is that I think there is something more. I don't necessarily want to say the word legitimate, but I do think that there is the perception of legitimacy with physical media, right? And that's, I just think people have a tendency to be like, well, you can put anything you want on the internet, who cares? If you if you hold it in your hand, it feels a little bit more real. And I felt like if you're going to do a magazine, you've got to have a physical version of it. And furthermore, if I was going to have a physical version of it, that I wanted it to be a like up to snuff, solid, like a well done thing,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you can sort of plant your stake in the ground, deliver physical, then nobody's going to ask you if you're going to be able to do digital. You know what I mean? But vice versa, there's always going to be those questions.
Okay. Interesting. So then you decide to go physical. How did you decide what you were going to put in it?
Well, I looked at what was kind of like drawing interest in the broader quote unquote Iron Age community, right? I actually put up a poll and I said, hey, you're stuck in a dentist office or something like that. I can't remember exactly what I said. And you're stuck at the doctor's office. You're going to be in the waiting room for a while. There's 3 different things that you could pick up, and whichever one you choose, you could take it with you. And there's a comic book, a anthology of short stories, and basically a magazine with reviews of the latest fiction or something, like, of what's going on. And I was like, which one would you pick? And the poll numbers were pretty interesting. So it was about, I want to say it was about 40 to 50% anthology, short story anthology, about 30% comic, and about 20% reviews, right? And so I was like, oh, well, there's kind of my framework, right? That's what I want to go with, is have a little bit of comics, a little bit of like short pulp fiction, because I felt like, pulp is coming back, and I think I'm not trying to like chase a trend, but I think that it does capture, like I was saying before, the need for an author to prove themselves and deliver something that the reader is going to enjoy in a very short period of time.
Okay.
And then reviews, I think, are just kind of like a natural, people like to hear about this, that, and the other going on in the world.
Right, exactly. I mean, yeah, the downside to reviews in a physical copy is that then,
they get dated, yeah,
very quickly. So, but fiction lasts forever.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So how many, so I know you've got the 10-page preview of Ghost of the Badlands by Razorfist and G Prime 85.
Mm-hmm.
Is that that's going to be
that is the only comic,
right? Okay.
Yeah. So I kind of, when I was proposing rates, I was thinking in a fairly pragmatic. My head was in a slightly different space, right? And I didn't appreciate the difference between the comic space and like the literature space. Okay. So with comics, you're kind of always dealing a little bit, since the 90s, collector editions and collection and all this other stuff has always played a part in the pricing and kind of the psychology of comics, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was looking and I'm like, okay, listen, a professional rate is like, $200 to maybe $400 a page. Although then you look at, and that's totally all the way done, everything. And
Right.
that's for an IP that the company owns. Okay. So then I'm like, okay, well, for an indie comic, this is presumably going to be cheaper than professional rates, and it's going to be not my IP. I'm not going to own it. You know what I mean? It's going to be them
Right.
kind of doing their own whatever. So ultimately, I think my pricing was too low. I'm going to be trying to increase that. Well, I'm not going to try. I'm going to increase that for the second issue. But, I was really wanting to put about 20 pages of comics in there, 20 to 30 pages. And it just didn't pan out. And it actually worked out perfectly because I looked at it and I was like, I could either spend this money on comics that, you know, don't really match what I was thinking of for the comic, or for the magazine, or I could take this money and start buying illustrations for the short stories. And so I started buying illustrations for the short stories. And then while I was doing that, Razorfist approached me about putting Ghost of the Badlands preview in the first issue of the magazine.
Okay, cool.
So it was just kind of like, it just worked out. And so that's been a major benefit, I think. And hopefully it'll be a good synergy between both of us, you know. Obviously, I think, you know, he has a much larger platform, so I don't think that he necessarily needed my help. But I do think that it's hopefully going to expose people who otherwise wouldn't have seen Ghost of the Badlands. If not now, then maybe in the future, you know, like you're saying, over the years, and encourage them to go out and seek it out to see how things resolve.
Well, and it's again, it's going back to that that exposure versus payment kind of a thing. So like,
well, and I want to pay people for what's in the magazine, right? You know, and that's kind of always been part of my thinking, is that if I'm going to make something that, or if I'm going to do something that I'm going to like conceivably profit from, then I'm going to make sure that gets passed along. You know what I mean? And a lot of people with magazines, and I understand why, a lot of people with short fiction anthologies and magazines don't do royalties at all, right? And I'm probably, unless something like gangbusters happens with the first issue, I'm probably not going to have to worry about royalties either. But I did put a threshold in for, you know, number of copies sold. And if we exceeded that amount, then we would start paying royalties out, but only for the initial publication window. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because what I've had people say is that, okay, well, there's some well-meaning places that have bankrupted themselves because they're legally obligated to send 2 cents to somebody, and it costs them $3 to do a wire transfer. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so they do this, and it just keeps eating away, and they've done it this way for years, and it just kind of like eventually sludges up the system, and they're screwed after a while, and so they just go bankrupt, and then nobody benefits from that. So I want to make sure that I'm paying people as much as I can. Mind you, everything was out of my pocket for this one, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like I'm going to end up crying myself to sleep over it.
The wife's not going to be, you know, staring you down for the next month.
I mean, listen, it's my anyway.
Don't worry about it.
She's not that type. But anyway, it's one of these ones where, you know, I think everything has been done. I've tried to do everything right from the very beginning, and I personally am very proud of the way that things have gone so far. I think everybody is extremely happy who's been involved directly in the magazine, you know, so hopefully everybody walks away feeling great about this thing.
Oh yeah, no. And what I wasn't like, I actually wanted to bring up that you were paying everybody, you know, for their contributions to Anvil. I was talking more about, you know, Razorfist saying, hey, how about we give you the preview? No. You know, that helps you get some extra exposure through his side. He gets some extra exposure, you know, by having it in print, even though it's not necessarily ready yet. Because I think that's probably coming later this year.
I think I don't want to speak out of turn, because I don't remember if it was said publicly or privately. But it's not going to be until definitely after October 1st, which is kind of the run period for this first issue. Because I think October is going to be when the second issue should be landing.
Okay. I was gonna say, because this one, one of your stretch goals, was actually to move everything up. So, like you had, because yeah, I mean, so first off, you wanted $2,500 to just get this thing off the ground. Clearly, you're doing a little bit better than $2,500.
Yeah, I just crossed the 500% funded, which is fantastic. I'm very, very, very thankful.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a great place to be at. So how did you decide? Well, okay, let me back up. How many different submissions did you get for issue number 1?
So for issue number 1, with almost no advertising, just kind of, Iron Age Media shouting it out on Twitter and on the website. And I think on like the, my Instagram gilded, the usual spots, and YouTube, we had 30 or so submissions, which was more than, I don't know what I expected exactly, but I was happy with 30 submissions.
Okay.
And what I would say is that, while there were a few that I don't think would have fit into the magazine at any point, there were probably, so listen, we printed about, let's see, there's 7, I think there's 7, and then the RPG. So basically 5 out of those 30 are what we took. And, there were another 5 or 6 more that it was kind of like, oh man, I kind of like, I feel bad bumping this one. It's just because something slightly better occupied a similar slot. Because one of the things I didn't really emphasize in the first one was that we're looking for a good broad variety of genres in this thing. We really want this thing to be kind of a grab bag of fiction, in writing style as well as in topic and genre. So.
Okay. So, actually, speaking of that, so is it more of a science fiction, fantasy?
I mean, it's fiction. There's okay. So let's just kind of go down the list here, based off of the names. We've got Ghost of the Badlands, which is a Western comic preview. I think it's actually going to be 11 pages, and then Fleet of Theseus, the cover story, that's science fiction, and kind of thinky, speculative science fiction. MFR did a kind of, it's a pulpy fantasy with some faith based sort of magic mixed in there. TJ Marquis has sort of a more psychedelic, abstract sci-fi. And, Daniel, my editor, if you listen to me right now, he'd be irritated that I don't have his document open. But he gave me a little like simpleton's explanation of what you should describe these stories as. But I don't know where it is, so he can just cry. Daniel P. Riley, the editor, he has a whimsical. So TJ Marquis and Daniel P. Riley, those are the 2 Iron Age Media prompts that I picked out and said, I like these, let's put them in the magazine, that hadn't previously been featured on the website. But his is kind of a whimsical fantasy. And ONG Tabard is a Victorian era kind of paranormal Sherlock Holmes mystery. Harry Stanford, he's the author of the solo RPG. And that's set in kind of like a light fantasy. William Donnelly wrote Codename Ghost, which is a cyberpunk, very action. I mean, it's science fiction, but it's very heavy on the cyberpunk and like a bit of gunplay and chopping things and action. It's very fast paced, very different. I saw that Sword Rush. Very different than the other science fiction pieces. And then Joshua M. Gonzalez with Thief of Perun, which is a sword and sandal, kind of a classic pulpy feel to it.
Okay. And so I mean, guess that's another question I didn't see. How big is this magazine?
It should be over 100 pages.
Oh.
So right now that's the target. Issue number 2 may be a little bit smaller. Part of my whole strategy to kind of like tailor things to better suit, better address some of the concerns that I've had with issue number 1.
Okay. And let's see. So, all right. So everybody gets a free morale print.
Oh yeah. I'm going to be doing an update about that on Monday. The morale print, the art is done for that one. And that morale print is done by the artist who did the cover.
Okay.
And it's really great. I'm loving it, and I'm going to be playing around with the lettering and everything else. I'm going to be laying that in together this weekend, and then on Monday there's going to be a big update through the IndieGoGo campaign.
Okay.
And I also have some dice here.
Uh-oh.
So
hold on.
The dice have finally come in.
Very nice.
Let me see if it. So they look pretty. I don't know. It's
a little rough.
It's a little rough, and that's kind of my gripe is that I think these are adequate, but I don't know. I'm gonna see how long. I'm gonna have to get on the phone with ChessX tomorrow and be like, how much is this gonna cost me? You know what I mean?
When I did them before, I think I ordered 100, and they were $1 a piece.
I don't think they're going to be $1 a piece anymore, based on what I've seen.
But I mean, you alone just because I'm going to need some dice, and right now you've got 275 backers, so you've already got enough to bring it down a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, and because I tried using the Anvil logo, but the Anvil logo is just too wide,
right?
For the dice, so it's kind of it's going to end up being the helmet. And
I think the helmet's a much better choice.
Yeah, and even that I had to kind of play around with a little bit. The die has 2 rivets instead of 3 on the helmet, on each side, and so it's slightly modified, but.
Well, what I would say if you if you talk to them, let me rephrase that. My suggestion would be figure out the cost and then offer it in sets of 6.
I know, but
anyway, I'm just saying you can pump the numbers up.
yeah, you're right. I probably could.
I would pay extra to get a set of at least
I'll make sure that I charge you extra.
I like your thought process. Well, my wife doesn't like your thought process, but I see where you're going. All right. So, but that's cool. I mean, over 100 pages for first time magazine. It's $35 total shipped. I mean, that's what I paid, because I'll admit it, folks, I went cheap. I just did the first year.
And like I said, that I really thought I was going to be able to get the whole thing out the door for under $30, but I started looking at a couple of things. The one factor being that they lowered the weight on first class mail down to 13 ounces, and I was not confident that I could get the magazine and a sufficiently protective packaging for it for 13 ounces. Now, if I just slap a bag on it and mail it, I probably could, but I think I'd get a lot of unhappy people.
Probably.
Because our postal service is just awful. And and the other thing was that the laws have changed regarding what rates, like it used to be $20,000 before you needed to worry about collecting sales tax or anything else. Now it's $600, and it's just all this other stuff. So it's like, that price includes tax, and then, which sucks because IndieGoGo doesn't give you the option to like charge tax so that the consumer understands this isn't even going to me, it's going to the freaking government. So you just have to price that in. And then if you charge that, then IndieGoGo says, yeah, I'm still going to take 8% of that. They take 8% of the shipping cost. They take 8% of whatever you calculate for tax. And so it's like, the most important thing to me was being able to make issue number 2 the most likely path forward. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so that's kind of where I was. And I've learned a lot. So hopefully issue number 2, I can at least start trimming a little bit on that. But we'll see.
Where is it being printed domestically, overseas?
It's being printed right in Houston. And I'm physically driving my truck over to this place, which is it's kind of a trip. It's like it's in the part of Houston where there's not even any signs that are in English. You know what I mean? So and not like Spanish either. We're talking like it's part of the Asian town area.
Okay.
And so it's like a very interesting part of town, but I've been there. I've seen what they produce. It's good stuff. Seems like it's good quality, and they're very eager to get things knocked out. Yeah, I don't blame you. I wish I'd only gone to Houston once, to be frank.
I went once, maybe twice. No, once. It was many, many years ago. Anyways, so trying to think of.
And actually, if you don't mind scrolling back up, I wanted to shout out that there was
keep going, or
that, yeah, right there. That the affair of the unquiet grave with that corpse right there. That's actually a piece from Eric Nienoltowski, who I just posted an article about his Shadow Century series, but I think everybody's going to be really excited by this artwork whenever you guys get a look at it.
Okay. So did you get a piece of art for each piece of fiction, or
so for every piece that was not basically every original piece is getting illustrated to some degree. Okay. The Iron Age media prompt submissions are not going to be illustrated. Maybe in the future I might do something like that, but I just frankly ran out of time, and I haven't actually figured out exactly how much money I've spent on everything. So, for issue number 2, I'm gonna have to sit down, crunch the numbers, and really look at what look at what I can manage. But for issue number 1, the Iron Age media prompts are just going to be just the text, and they'll probably include the prompt picture or a revision of it to try and avoid any copyright issues, yada yada.
Right. So I think you said there were two of the stories in Anvil that come out of the prompts.
Yes.
Okay. And
those are the last 2 listed. So.
Okay. In the future, are you planning on doing more from the prompts, or
I plan on pulling 1 or 2 from the Iron Age media prompts for every issue.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, why not more?
Well, because I wanted original content.
Okay.
And I think that there's enough people out there writing fiction, and understandably, so kind of going back to that conversation we had about, what is the value proposition between me and these authors, right? Mm-hmm. Well, with the short fiction prompts, really the only value proposition is exposure, right? So you still want to put your best foot forward, but, maybe you're not going to do an editing and all this other stuff, right?
Right.
So, but with the original stories just for Anvil, I really want to try and push people to send me their absolute best. and they've got a full month to write it. You know what I mean? Rather than 2 weeks.
Mhm.
I'm always going to, or longer. I'm basically going to start having a rolling submission window and try and make it so that it's predictable, so that everybody knows, okay, well, once every 3 months, Richard's going to be looking for stories, and they're going to be like this. I'm going to have at least 30 days to write them, and so on and so forth.
Right. Okay. Sorry that I distracted. That happens. Gotta love modern technology where you get notifications on 8 different things. It's great for the ADHD. So, all right. So then submissions for issue 2 probably starting in like May.
I'm going to publish the guidelines, because here's one thing that I noticed is that I published the guidelines and opened the submission window at the exact same time for issue number 1. And I noticed that the things that I got early on, while I got a few things that were really great, I also got the most it was the most case of like either like this doesn't belong in a short fiction magazine at all, or this is like somebody must have like already been sitting on this, right? And what happened was that I think a lot of people had stuff that they were sitting on, and they were like, "Oh, I'm just going to send this in," right? And that's fine. I don't mind. I enjoyed reading all of it, but I'm going to publish the guidelines on Saturday, which will be April 15th. The submission window opens on May 1st. Okay. And it's probably going to go until the 15th of May, maybe like the 20th of May, something like that. Okay. And then that's going to give us like 10 days or so to get responses back and kind of filter through people and get contracts signed and all that jazz.
Okay. Got it. So, wow. So that's actually a little bit sooner than I was expecting.
Well, it's following a similar timeline to issue number 1. And the last thing I want to do is compress my timeline any more than I already have.
Sure. No, I just, I basically, I forgot what day it was.
That happens to me a lot.
Yeah, that was the main problem. It was just like, oh yeah, that's like way down the road because you're planning on shipping, issue 1 in July.
Mm-hmm.
So
possibly before then. I'm optimistic that I'll be able to get everything done and printed so that people can have it like at the beginning of July. That's my goal. You know what I mean? But I'm telling everybody you'll have it in July because, even if things really go sideways, like with a printer or something like that, then I can figure something else out in a month. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And only because I'm in Houston and there's like 12 printers in Houston. You know what I mean? So.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean I did some stuff, but it had like in the past, and I lucked out and found I found a manufacturer here in the Phoenix area, and it was great. And then they shut down, and it's like, there's nothing for this in the state,
yeah,
anymore. So
that is one good thing about Houston. You know what I mean? So
okay. And because you were originally, I think I'd heard you say that your plan was just to do like a couple issues a year. But I think you've changed that since then.
Well, I was always kind of looking at being a quarterly, right?
Okay.
I was like, okay, we're going to start out as a quarterly, and then we may ramp up to bi-monthly, right?
Okay.
And right now, as it stands, unless some kind of huge pile of money drops in my lap for some reason, I don't see us going to bi-monthly in 2024. You know what I mean? I just that would be a lot. I'm not sure if the market's there, and I'm just not sure. I don't know. I'm just a little bit skeptical about my ability to scale that up.
Sure.
I kind of have started, the best thing coming out of all of this, well, aside from the magazine itself, which I'm extremely excited about, is that I've figured out, I've answered a bunch of questions for myself, because I went into this and I was like, oh man, well, how much does this cost? How much does this cost? What does this take? How much time does this take? You know what I mean? And everybody had all of these like nonsense answers and all this other stuff, or nobody could tell you, or, oh, well, actually you can get this for free. And I'm like, I don't believe that. Or you can get it for free, but it's going to take you 6 months. You know what I mean?
My frustration is the one where people won't tell you.
And some people wouldn't tell certain things, but most people have been people who actually knew, who I know through the community, have been very forthcoming. So that's been good. But yeah, I've been very happy with the way everything's going, and I know so much more about like actually getting this magazine out the door now. I feel comfortable saying that we could make it a quarterly. You know what I mean?
Sure. So. And I actually think that's a good enough rate for something like this. You're not overwhelming people. I mean, it's not like, I mean, this is not any kind of a knock, but it's not like it's not like a traditional magazine where it's like, oh, it's $5. Oh, who cares?
Yeah. Well, listen, traditional magazines are wild things if you actually open them up and start looking at them, because they are like 50% ads.
Right.
And there are ads in Anvil #1. There probably won't be in issue #2, but it's crazy how many ads. And I've only like wanted to put in ads that are from the community, because I thought it would be like a good way to have people get some exposure and also help fund the comic, or not the comic. I keep saying comic. Actually, I was originally thinking that maybe the ad sales could pay for the comic, but then that didn't work out. And ultimately, I think that the ads, due to legal concerns surrounding what qualifies for media mail shipping, are ultimately going to be a detriment to the magazine, but in terms of value and cost and everything. So that probably is why they're not going to come back in issue #2. But like, I think people can, I don't think people have any problem with seeing an occasional ad for something. It's just whenever you pick up a magazine and you're like halfway through, you're like flipping through an editorial and you're like, well, this looks kind of cool. And then you realize that it's actually just a gigantic freaking paid promotional. You know what I mean?
Right. Or like you go to a website and it's just like ad all over the place. I mean, let's be honest, we all use ad blockers now because of it.
Yes.
But then like in my day-to-day, I'll be honest, I use Brave, and they throw up little ads at me every now and again. And if I click on it, then they're going to give me some of their Brave tokens. And
yeah.
It's very minuscule, but you know what? Every few months, I get another $5 worth for an Amazon gift card. It's like,
yep, okay,
you're going to pay me to look at your ads. I'll give you. Well, let's be honest. I pop open the window and I close it immediately. So they're not getting much out of me, but no, I think everybody also kind of understands that, obviously funding for this has to come from somewhere. It's either going to come from the consumer, or it's going to come from an advertiser to drop that consumer rate down. Like I was joking in one of my my painting streams that, I'm like, hey folks, just so you know, if I ever get the offer to start, pitching Raid Shadow Legends, I'm going to do it, because this is a gaming channel. I've bought like 95% of everything that I've shown on the channel. So that has to come from somewhere. And, it either Yeah.
Well, and I think that there's also, I think that there's different kinds of relationships that people have. So you look at somebody like the Quartering, like he kind of quietly says, like my viewers understand that these are ad reads. You know what I mean? Whenever he says this is the best, I have so much fun playing Raid Shadow.
I know, right?
You know what I mean? Yada yada yada. It's like, okay, we know that's not true, and it's fine because you're paying. You're paying your bills.
Right.
And I don't mind that at all. But I think that there are ways to do things with a little bit more synergy. And like you're going back to Brave with their basic attention token, right? That they pay out. I think that's a good example of how you can find mutually beneficial ecosystems and economic solutions that incentivize people in the same direction. Like one thing I've, if people weren't so allergic to, the three little letters NFT, like I've done a lot of stuff in the crypto space. And while the term is associated with, like bad art, usually, you know what I mean? Or like really hideous things and people who are, running rug pulls and other scams and so on and so forth. Like the technology is there that now you can like immutably track purchases and contributions through certain things, right? And you could do that through the blockchain, but not in a tokenized fashion. And so it opens up the potential for communities to be able to self-fund in their own ways like that. And so, longer term, I think the internet ultimately is going to have to kind of go back a little bit towards what it used to be, where there was a lot more decentralization, but you're still going to have these certain levels of not collectivism, but collaboration between people. And you're going to have the technologies to enable that sort of thing. And so that's, you want to have a good relationship with your consumers so that they're getting what they want. And then they're also enabling you to provide the thing that they want. So anyway, so that was like a total non sequitur there.
No, I don't think it's a non sequitur because again, it does come back to, how, like you said, with the decentralization, but then also how do we get more products like Anvil magazine out there? It as much as as much as people may not want ads or something, do you want your fiction or do you want no ads?
Yeah. Well, or do you want illustrations with your fiction or do you want no ads? You know what I mean? Like there's always a cost that has to come from somewhere. But I actually think that there's enough passion in the community to create, both on the creative side and on the fan side, the consumer side, that I think that we can do this without ads. You know what I mean? Or at least I'm going to try it. So
yeah,
I'm going to examine it. I don't know if I'm going to try it, but I'm going to seriously examine it. And
I was also just thinking when as we've been kind of going back and forth on it, it's also maybe what are alternative ads. It doesn't have to be, hey, come buy my widget. It could be, it could be an article about, hey, I designed XYZ board game and here's why I what I think are its strengths and weaknesses, whatever, presented in an article format as opposed to just a in your face ad. Yeah, exactly, doing more editorial side. So I think there's a lot of potential with it.
Yeah. And also the other thing is I think that as volume and some of my distribution, like current questions because I really don't know how I'm going to handle long-term distribution. You know what I mean? But like as those things iron themselves out, I think that I don't know. I'm very optimistic about how everything's going to work out. I was obviously I was optimistic about this like being successful, or else I wouldn't have done it. But I think I was on Michael Bancroft's show whenever it was just a few days in. It had already like hit like 200% funded or something like that. And there were some folks in the chat, or there was one person in the chat in particular who was like, but I don't understand how you like, basically magazines are a failed medium. Like, what are you doing? You know, I'm like, I don't think they're a failed medium. I agree that there's some reasons why you might not think it was successful, but you know, I'm taking a slightly irrationally optimistic leap of faith here, you know?
Right.
And they were like really disturbed by the idea that I was just sort of like taking a leap of faith and trying something new, you know? And, you know, it's one of these things where I think that people are going to have to take some risks, try some things. And I think that a lot of stuff is actually going to turn out a lot better than what you might have thought beforehand, you know? I think there's a lot of pessimism in the creator space for a lot of good reasons, you know, and it's been kind of a rough time, you know, in the broader economy, you know, but also it's been a rough time for creatives for a couple of decades now. And it's been kind of crappy to see good stuff turned into garbage and then garbage elevated. You know what I mean? And so I think that, you know, I think that people can hopefully take this as a sign that, you know, well, not necessarily saying, oh, well, we need more magazines or something, but we need more stuff. Like there's things, try new things, go out there and, you know, roll some dice, see if it works.
Well, and another way that I would put it is not necessarily trying new things, trying old things. Like, well,
yes,
you know, well, and I think that's a little bit better way to think about it, because let's be honest, vinyl records, those died 30 years ago, you know, or more, but now they're the new hotness, you know. Sort of. I mean, you know, for a certain a certain clientele, but regardless, I never thought I would see the return of vinyl records.
Yes.
So there's no reason you can't do magazines, you know, as well.
And Razor talked a little bit about how vinyl is like a natural premium physical option. You know what I mean? And I see Andrew Campbell mention in chat, talk about like an annual as a hardcover book. You know, that's another thing that I've thought about doing, you know, is like how much, like what's a really primo magazine. But at the same time, magazines by themselves have been like a very well, recently they've been disposable, almost garbage media, right? But back in the old days, like, I mean, there are magazines that people collect and they even cherish those outdated ads, you know?
Right.
And magazines used to be catalogs and things like that. People would collect catalogs of stuff, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So there were some like very premium options out there. And while, you know, Anvil issue number 1, I'm just trying to get it out the door and make a quality product while I do it. Eventually, yeah, I'm going to try and make this like, I don't know if I'm going to have kind of like the saddle stitch version that's, you know, the bottom dollar, get it out the door. But I kind of think that's where digital belongs. You know what I mean? and then like try to keep making the physical one more and more premium, you know?
Sure, and I think there's a lot of different ways that you can play off it as well. So it's like, okay, we have the quarterly magazine, we have the annual book, and so while the magazine maybe it's 5,000 word short stories, the book it's going to be 10 to 20,000 word short stories or whatever.
Well, I've also I don't know I originally, before I thought about doing a magazine, what I thought about doing was a quote unquote like content bundle of anthology type stuff, and having basically a variety of different mediums, type of like some music, some like a book, kind of make the short story anthology the backbone of things, and then make all these other add-ons that were not just, I mean, like this time I did posters because I felt like they were a good fit, and I could do 8x10 prints and put them in for no additional shipping cost, and which is great and all. But the thing is that I looked at it and I thought to myself, I was like, okay, well, what I really need is to build the backbone first. And that's what Anvil is. And so as Anvil grows, I'm going to start doing some other fun stuff and kind of like keep trying new things as it goes.
Sure. And I'm excited to see what those new things are. I mean, like I said, there are a lot of options. There's a lot of different things that can be done. It doesn't have to mirror the same things we had 30 years ago. But like you look at like Dan Abnett, for instance. I don't know if you're familiar with him at all. But
no, not offhand.
So he's all over the place now. But when I first heard of him, he was writing fiction for Warhammer.
Okay.
And the first book that Games Workshop put out from him, now I'm not claiming to be an expert on his background or whatever, but like the first book that he put out was called First and Only. And basically it was a collection of short stories that he'd then gone back and written like little in-between parts to kind of collect it and make one book out of it. But the thing is, all those short stories were in an old magazine that Games Workshop did called Inferno that, so like he just kept putting out all of these little short stories, and then it was collected, and then bam, now he's getting book deals, and now he's like, I don't know, he's written 50 Warhammer books or something at this point. So there's a lot of benefits that can come out of doing things like Anvil magazine.
Well, and a lot of, I mean, going way back, a lot of the great pulp and early science fiction writers, I mean, like
Foundation.
Yeah, exactly. All of the greats of that 1940s, 1950s science fiction, they were all in science fiction magazines. That's literally what they wrote, and they got paid per word. You know what I mean?
Right. And
so,
survived.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's one of these things where I think the market has moved so far away from that line of thinking that people forget that this used to be a real deal back in the day. And hopefully, one thing I'm trying to do is offer regularity so that people know when I'm going to be accepting stories. Now, mind you, obviously I can't really do that until I get more of a routine in place.
Sure.
But I'm trying to establish a regular pacing to things. And as I get more readership, I'm not going to leave the rates the same. I'm going to be trying to pay people more. You know what I mean?
Right.
And, I think issue number 2, I'm going to maintain the same rates, because until I make sure I wasn't a flat, you know what I mean? Like, you're afraid.
Yeah, right.
All the attention. Issue number 2, everybody's like, oh, I don't want that. That's not the new baby. You know what I mean? Everyone wants to kiss the new baby. and so on and so forth. But once I feel like we have a solid base of like what is our actual readership on a per issue basis, then I'm going to be trying to pass along more value, because I'm not trying to like make a living off of Anvil. I'm just trying to make it sustainable so that I can do it without, making myself miserable. You know what I
mean? You're not necessarily trying to quit the day job, just have some.
No, not at all. I mean, listen, I'm very happy with the success of Anvil, but there's no way it's going to pivot to something permanent anytime soon.
At least not until issue 5.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Issue number 5, I expect to have a mansion.
Yeah.
So I'm kidding. I would never have a mansion. I would have a compound. And,
right.
Out
in the Texas
wire.
desert somewhere.
Yes.
No, I think that is actually a fantastic plan. The compound's pretty cool too, but I just getting in that routine, making sure that people know, hey, if you want to submit, or if you just want this new piece of fiction, if you want to support these creators, hey, it's coming out in May, it's coming out in August, whatever the timelines are. So and I hope we see a lot more success on that. So let's see. So we're getting kind of close to 9. Anything that we haven't covered, anything that I should be bringing up on the IndieGoGo campaign? Oh, real quick before Richard answers, down below, folks, there is a link both to Iron Age Media and to the IndieGoGo campaign if you are interested. So please do go check those out. But anything that I missed, anything that we should talk about?
I don't think that there's anything to, well, I don't know. There certainly is, but I just can't think of it at the moment.
Right. We'll think about it here like in a couple of hours, then we'll hit each other up on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't we talk about this? All right. Actually, you know what? This is total, out of order. Maybe if I'd organized things ahead of time, we could have done that. So with the writing prompts, you just use AI art on that, correct?
Yeah, I use Midjourney.
Okay. Why that instead of, say, taking the art prompts?
I don't get enough of them. I don't get enough. And when I started it, there were no art prompts. I've noticed that listen, I'm not I'm not deaf to the concerns of artists about AI art, and sure. I certainly understand where they're coming from. One thing that I'll say, and I've had some people get very upset with me for doing AI art for the literature prompts, is that there is no money. I was never going to spend money on art prompts. Like, no offense to artists or anything, but I just don't have that kind of money. You got to go find somebody who has a lot more money than me to go pay however much money it would take to get regular prompts in, which I can guarantee you would be at least a few $100s a month.
Right.
Per prompt. No, well, maybe. Yeah.
Right.
But regardless, it would at least be a couple hundred. And, so the thing, kind of the argument I have is, listen, I never would have made the magazine without the support of all these authors. These authors never would have supported me without the literature prompts, And in turn, now that I have the magazine, I've shelled out a couple grand to artists and authors. You know what I mean? So, the thing that I go back to is that there's a lot of, people talk about AI stealing art, and there's certainly cases where you can see where that has occurred. But people have been stealing things from other people forever. The technology is the only thing that changed. The intent is not new at all. In fact, how many Batman cartoons have been how many Batman cartoons were traced, back in the day? And that's well known. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I never try to imitate a particular work or anything else like that. So, yeah.
Well, and I wasn't trying to throw you under the bus. It was
no. I just kind of want to get it out there because I know that some people have asked the question. I don't think I've really ever articulated it in that way. So I figure I'd go ahead and do that.
Sure, and I think in one of the issues I've had over the whole AI art argument is when they're like, oh well, it's stealing, Bob's art style, and it's like, well, yeah. And when I looked at your Deviant art profile, you copied this other artist in a style to make your own thing. Yes, you may have done it with your own hands, but you still copied their style instead of making your own.
Yes, but I'm going to give them a little bit of credit. That person at least has the opportunity to acknowledge what their inspiration was. Okay,
right.
What they were copying. If I am, and to me, what this really argues for, and this is something that I've noticed, is how many people were art critics before our AI art became popular, or at least commonplace. Maybe not popular, but commonplace. How many people did you see going around criticizing art? Or, you know what I mean? I didn't see very many. I saw mostly people going around, oh yes, that's beautiful. Oh, that's wonderful. That's inspiring. What is that? I don't know. It's a toilet with a, you know what I mean?
Right.
with a cross upside down in it, because that's original. And, and all these other things. And so, I think the correct response is that people should educate themselves. And I think that there are absolutely unethical ways to use AI. There's unethical ways to look at somebody's art and try to directly copy it without giving attribution or at least credit. And I've noticed this with authors too. There's authors who I've interviewed or at least talked to, and if you ask them, well, who were your big inspirations? And they go, oh, nobody. I just came up with all this. I'm super cool. And you're like, okay, that's a load of crap. And usually they are the people who you can see the most obvious straight line between their work and somebody else's work. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas really fantastic authors, you say, well, who inspired you? And what did you, and they're like, oh man, I love, Gene Wolfe, and I loved Tolkien back in the day. And, Neuromancer was like a huge inspiration for this thing, and all this other stuff. And so I think that the big problem with AI is that you have a great deal of trouble being honest about what you're doing. Okay. Right. So that is my big, I will give them that for sure. And so I think that pushes you into saying, listen, I think that you should be more educated about art. And when I say that, I don't mean in some kind of like a highfalutin liberal arts degree. I mean, like literally, you need to know more about art. You need to understand what you're seeing, because I was playing around with concept art at one point in time just for my own purposes, and I wanted to try and get the styles of this Terran Trade Authority, right, which is this was a huge inspiration for me whenever I was a kid. I love this stuff. All right, and this is a collection of different artists. But Stuart Cowley is the one who collected most of these things and did some of the art, right? And I was trying to just like look and see, and a lot of his stuff is not online. Some of it is, but a lot of it isn't. So I was like, all right, well, can I play around with AI art and like maybe get some designs and blend some things? And I used his name. I would never publish anything or put anything out there that I'd use somebody's name, just because I feel like that's bordering on unethical. But I was just, toying. And like it was turning up garbage, just absolute nonsense that had nothing to do with the man or any of this. I type in like 1970s spaceship and then what I wanted, and bam, I've got that. I've got that exact art style. And I went, my God, okay, so they are, you know what I mean? Like it's a search algorithm. And so it's very easy to not steal, but I don't know. I'm reluctant to use the word steal, but to at least appropriate without credit the styles and influences of things if you do not understand what you're looking at. And so that's where I would say, in a way, to me, I think to try and take a positive spin on it, I think that people should be more educated about art before they start dabbling with AI art.
Yeah, and I think it's again coming back to the exposure side. You know, like if you're just going for, I'm going to call it genericized AI art. You know, you're not trying to replicate, you know, the Demon King in the style of Walt Disney. You know,
right?
It's like, it's like, you know, just give me the Demon King. It's like, okay, I can work with this. You know, to at least get those prompts. And then especially as Iron Age takes off, as you get more submissions, more people, you know, I mean, DeviantArt already exists as far as stuff like that goes, but get some more submissions that
I would love to do what you were
around.
saying. Yeah, I would love to do what you're saying of have this like back and forth synergy, because then you're connecting artists and authors. You know what I mean? And I want to do that anyway. And yeah, exactly. And so it's one of these things where like in a perfect world, I want to do that, and I would like to kickstart that. And in some ways, I'm already starting to hopefully kickstart those kinds of relationships with Anvil, you know,
right?
And you know, because I've paid for this art, it's going into the magazine. I'm not going to like I don't know. I'm probably not just going to say, yeah, post it anywhere for you know what I mean, or not post, but print it anywhere you want for free after this. You know what I mean?
Right.
But at the same time, they're going to be able to, you know, if they want to get it for like licensing or something like that, I'm going to give them a really good deal, you know. And then now they have great art to go out and market some of their books with. And then they're hopefully going to go, well, geez, I already have this. I have this like awesome artwork for, you know, like my first story. Maybe I could get a couple more things done. And then that artist hopefully has some more business. You know what I mean? So I really want to build the ecosystem, build this economy as much as I can.
Yeah, no. And I think that's, I think that's really what all of this kind of needs is just, it needs that ecosystem. It needs, you know, people that want to write, want to draw, want to do, you know, whatever it is, and just build on each other.
Well, and also bring new eyes in, because that's one of the big reasons why I decided to go ahead and start Anvil, and be a little bit more specific with my branding of Anvil, in that I want to start building a brand for consumers, because I think that there's increasingly going to be a wave of consumers coming that say, you know what, I really don't want to be part of the mainstream or the legacy media. I'm tired of all this. Give me something else. But I don't want to go through the effort of sorting through, you know, the thousands of, you know, indie books out there. Just where can I go to be spoon-fed something that I'm going to like? You know what I mean? Like they don't want to change their consumption habits. They just want to change the source. And so hopefully Anvil can be that, and it can be an entry ramp or like an on-ramp for the uninitiated into this whole world and everything else. Because you know, I think R.H. Snow talked about at one point in time, like you don't want to be in the situation where you're passing the same $10 around the convention. Ooh, I like your book. Oh, cool. How much is it? $10. All right, cool. And you walk across the, you know what? I really like your book. Yeah. How much? $10. Here you go. You know? And so, you know, it just makes one great big loop. That's not what you want either. So I think, I don't know, hopefully Anvil is checking all those boxes and we're firing on all cylinders, even though we're just a little tiny go-kart at the moment. But I'm optimistic that we can really get things moving.
Yeah, and I'm excited for it too. I mean, especially if it's coming out in July, hopefully sooner. I know you said that.
I hope I hope to have it shipping so that you can have it at the beginning of July. You know what I mean?
There we go. But I will definitely review it on my channel when I get it, so
awesome.
We'll get some more traction that way. Because obviously I'm assuming you'll print some extra copies for people.
I'm going to have some marketing copies. I'm going to mark them as marketing copies. I've also decided that I'm going to make, at least for this first issue, while I'm fuzzy on what my future distribution plans are, I'm going to clearly indicate first run status of these. And then I'm going to like do a bit of overrun, but I'm probably going to mark them as overrun. And then for marketing copies that I send out, I'm going to physically mark them as marketing copies so that anybody who orders something from the campaign is going to get something that they can't get anywhere else.
Got it. Okay. No, I wasn't worried about that. I was just
I know you're probably not, but some people are, and I just want to make sure that everybody's happy. At least as many people as I can make happy are happy.
You're gonna have so many angry people. Yeah. and that's not me trying to pick on you. That's just
I know.
The internet is horrible.
It's the truth of it.
But anyways, all right. Well, folks, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I hope you found it interesting. Richard, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me. I was a little worried we weren't going to hit the 2 hours, but I think we did pretty well. So we're going to end it here. Hold on, Richard. We're going to say our proper goodbyes, off stream. But before I let you go, any last things you want to shout out? Any, things we didn't cover?
Well, I'll just reiterate that, if you are not a supporter of Anvil Magazine, I really encourage you to go check it out. There's a lot of fantastic fiction. There's going to be some beautiful art in it and some interesting and fun additions in there. And, also check out ironage.media. There's always new content going up throughout the week. There's a wealth of short fiction and fun illustrations there as well. If you want to take part in that, especially for the March submissions, they're about to start voting they're about to go into voting on Friday. So you'll be able to vote on the short story and the
art.
The poetry. I don't think we had enough art submissions for March to have voting, but there's plenty of poetry and flash fiction and then short story prompt submissions. So go check it out. It's too late. I'm not going to have everything up and firing on all cylinders tomorrow morning, but I will get it up sometime tomorrow.
Got it. All right. Well, then, absolutely go check out the websites. Also, don't forget, if you're new here, I know there are a lot of names that I have never seen before. I would appreciate if you did hit the subscribe button. I'm getting close to 1,000 and, super, super excited to hit that. Also Sunday evenings, on the Iron Age YouTube channel, you can see Richard and his amazing painting skills.
My out of focus painting skills.
Yes, yeah. his out of focus painting skills. But it's just a nice, chill, way to end the week, end your weekend, and just kind of make fun of him and wonder why he's not painting his mechs to look like pizza.
Listen to me ramble. Yeah, whenever I'm painting, forget out of focus. Half the time I'm not even on camera. I'm like over here. So then I just do nope, never mind. Here we go. Back over here.
Yeah. Dude, I do the same thing on mine. So you are in good company. But yeah, anyways, so thank you so much, folks. We're going to go ahead and end it here. But Come back next week. We'll have more topics and tangents. Check out during the week. I usually do a couple of streams where I'm painting stuff, but also all sorts of tabletop gaming content, and love for you to come along. So with that out of the way, thanks folks, and we will talk to you next time.